Final Fantasy VII was the first or the fastest to reach 1 million units title.
Get ready.
Hello friends, welcome back to Replay. I'm Greg Off, and today we have a really exciting show for you. My guest is Kyoko Yamashita, and if you're a fan of Japanese games from the last 30 years, and frankly, who isn't? This includes Final Fantasy concerts in LA, Kingdom Hearts, Res Infinite, Tetris Effect, Luminous Arise, and probably a stack of others that you don't even realize. There is a real chance Kyoko was intimately involved somewhere along the line. She joined Square's US team as they prepared to launch Final Fantasy VII in the States, and she led PR and marketing for several years. She was one of the founders of XSEED Games. She spent the last decade as SVP of Marketing Communications at Enhance, working alongside Tetsuya Mizuguchi. And most recently, she was the cultural consultant on Forza Horizon 6, a Playground Games title where she helped a British studio understand the difference between Japan as an aesthetic and Japan as lived in. Kyoko is one of the most important and beloved bridge figures between Japanese creators in the West, and someone most Western audiences have never heard of, largely by her own choosing. Today, we're going to hear from the person who usually makes these conversations possible for everyone else. Kyoko, thank you for coming. Welcome to Replay. Kyoko, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to have this opportunity to chat with you. Thank you. And for the listeners, Kyoko and I have known each other. I don't even know how long we've known each other. What would you think? What do you think?
Almost
Do we
30.
Want to say 30 years?
Well, I just said it.
Yeah.
Like 25 to be safe.
Right. Okay.
And then
We'll shave off a few. Yeah. So we go way back, which is really great because I think we're going to have a great conversation for sure. We have so much to talk about. So thank you. And let's jump in. So I know, thank you. Yeah, I know that you're very, to me, and I'm sure all the listeners, you're a very interesting individual. I want to start before games because you've been in games forever. I know you were born and raised in LA, right? And you spent middle and high school years in Tokyo, though. And then I think, if my research was correct, your first professional job in the U.S. was a paralegal at Honda.
Yes, that's correct.
Great. So from what I could tell, games didn't really enter the picture until like 1997 or so. So I was hoping you could walk me back to like the LA to Tokyo and back version of Kyoko. And what was your life like? What did it teach you about being, kind of on the seam of those two cultures?
Yeah, that is a loaded question, but I'll give it a shot.
You can do it.
So no, you're correct. I was born and raised in LA from 12 to pretty much, except for the last year of high school, I was in Tokyo, came back to LA, and then just one other city I lived in is San Francisco, where Greg, I know we saw each other a lot more frequently. I was raised, now I can say it looking back at how I was raised, but I would say that I guess the easiest way to sort of grasp the idea of how I was raised here in America is that everything inside the house was very Japanese. My parents, they didn't know when we're going to go back to Japan, basically. So they raised us, in Japanese. The house rule was once you are inside the house, everything had to be in Japanese. So we were raised very Japanese. I have an older brother. But once I'm outside the house, obviously, local, regular elementary school, and friends, both Japanese, Asian, and non-Asian, non-Japanese friends. So they were all mixed. The good thing, I guess, the huge plus and positive about that time, though, is that my parents, because they didn't know when we were going to go back to Japan, there was an everyday Japanese school kind of right down the street from where we lived, which was by coincidence. We didn't know. It's not that we aimed to live near that school. So I went to two schools every day. The regular, elementary school from like 8 to 2, 2:30, and then from like 4 to 7, I went to Japanese school every single day. So by the time
Wow.
we moved to Tokyo when I was 12, I can say that I was already bilingual, which I didn't know growing up at that time what that was going to mean and entail and all that. But I was very fortunate to, I guess, be brought up in that kind of environment. Spent my teenage years in Japan. I enjoyed every single moment every year. I didn't surprisingly have a lot of adjusting to do.
That's amazing.
Um, yeah, language wise, I didn't. I think school culture wise, I did, the school uniforms and, what you see in the dramas and the anime and like all that was all of a sudden my world. So even just, commuting to school, it's not you don't get dropped off by a car. You either walk or take the bicycle, or like LA, you can't really live without a car.
Right. Yeah.
So that was like totally flipped for me in Japan and Tokyo, and then came back to pretty much the same place in Los Angeles.
Did that experience, being able to kind of soak up both the U.S. style, the Western culture, and also Japanese culture, I would imagine that served you really well in your career, being able to kind of like walk both of those lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that has sort of become, that is sort of my identity
Yeah.
in the workplace and what I do. I didn't know how sort of impactful and what a strength and sort of plus it was going to be when I started working. But now, having gone through many years of working in this industry and sort of beyond these days, I almost wouldn't mind if someone just said that that's who you are and they didn't know what
Mm-hmm.
background in terms of like actual career background that I had previous to being this person, a kind of a cultural advisor or interpreter or business development, partner or what have you. Like they may not even know what I
Yeah.
used to kind of do in my early years as a career person, but now it seems like that's, I wouldn't say a more easier entry point, but it seems like that is who I've become over the years.
Yeah. And then I know from our friendship that you are a car person, like through and through. And I didn't realize that, you had actually like, in theory, had started your career in the car industry pretty early on, and that's paid off for you. And we'll get to the work that you did with Microsoft and Forza, which is really cool. I'm just curious, like, that was that job or that entry, is that what kicked off your love, or was it the other way around? You're like, I love cars, so I'm going to try to find a foothold in.
You know, I have always loved cars. I think when I was, let's say, a little girl, elementary school, doing your family trips, again, in California, the lifestyle is very different. I think
Yeah.
almost all families, go to their summer vacations nearby, weekend trips by car. And I think for me, it was always more of a visual thing. I was attracted to seeing these things on four wheels. I was also a tomboy growing up, so I was, roller
Mm.
skating, rollerblading, skateboarding, ice skating, and like movement was a big thing. I was always constantly like on the go, on the run, very active. Having an older brother who was mildly into cars, but also, if I give this away, I spent a number of years in the city of Torrance here in LA. A lot of people might know that, oh, Torrance, I've heard of it, lots of Asian American families. While that is true, it's also the original home of Toyota and Nissan and Honda American headquarters.
Yep.
Toyota and Nissan are no longer headquartered there anymore. Honda is still there. So it was kind of an environmental like thing too,
Yeah.
to see such large Japanese companies, in our backyard, and lots of those cars being driven around us in the neighborhood. Yeah.
For our listeners, I will just say, because I think Kyoko is too humble to say it herself. She is, when I say a car person, she actually will take her cars and go out on the track and do all that kind of racing stuff. So she's hardcore, and I love it. That's super cool.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so we'll put a pin in that for now, and I wanted to kind of continue your through lines. So you were at Honda, and you left to become a PR person at Square Enix. And I know there was a recent article, somewhat recent, in the Japanese version of Xbox Wire, where you described it as, and I'm going to really butcher this, but I'm going to try, Arukikake de? Arukikake de?
Yes. Okay. Very good. Very good.
Thank you. Through, which is like, I think it translates to through a certain opportunity. So
yes.
I was wondering, what was that opportunity? Like, how did you end up from Honda to Square Enix?
It's a little bit of I think it's a funny story. The short answer is I totally fell into the world of working in the video game business. So
don't we all?
I was a paralegal. Yeah, I was a paralegal at Honda, and there was this company back then still called Squaresoft before Square Enix. Mm-hmm. And this was shortly after Final Fantasy VII had launched in Japan, because back then simultaneously launching globally was still not a thing.
Yeah.
And the placement agency that got me the Honda, I was an intern and then went full time, but they specialized in bilingual professionals. And they said, "Hey, Kyoko, do you know this company called Squaresoft? Apparently they're a Japanese video game company." And they came in and left a list of all these openings, but we don't know who they are, their culture, are they even serious? And this placement agency itself had a lot of bilinguals working, but they were, I would say, slightly older than me at that time. A lot of females, and no one apparently in the office really knew who Squaresoft was, or maybe even Final Fantasy. Yeah. So they called me and said, "Well, look, one of the openings is a paralegal. Like, Kyoko, wouldn't you be interested? Are you not interested?" And I said, "Well, not really. I wasn't looking to switch companies." Yeah. I was only maybe 2 years in at Honda. So I was like, not really, but maybe it's an interesting, just at least conversation I can have. Well, what I found out is what they were basically telling me is like, "Hey, can you go apply and say that you're interested so you can go check them out and like report back to us?"
Oh, that's hilarious. So you're doing like the work that recruiters work for them.
Exactly. So I did. I took a whole day off work. And then went to go have an interview at the Squaresoft office. Essentially, they were a startup. There was an office manager, I would say barely 10 maybe employees. I was counting earlier this morning in preparation for this. I think maybe 8, 9, or 10 bodies in the office. And so I interviewed with them. On the way back, they already called me and said, "Oh, your interview was great, but they want to hire." They're desperately looking for someone, not a paralegal. I mean, they were, but they're like, "Right. We're desperately looking for someone in like the marketing and PR and sales department." I mean, I think there was only one person at that time who was in sales, and then who eventually became my boss. He had just arrived from Japan not too long ago, maybe 5, 6 months ago. He didn't speak English very well. And so they were just desperately looking for someone in the marketing department. And I said, "Well, I don't have any experience, and I'm only 2 years into my real career. Like, who's going to switch jobs, industry, and career? That wasn't
Right.
what I was looking for. So I declined, but then they said, no, they want to interview you again. So I did. I went down again, and I thought about this. I do remember my parents really just questioning me why I'm even entertaining this idea. Traditional Japanese
Yeah.
parents,
Yeah.
I'm working for a great Japanese company.
Yes.
I don't think they thought that I would make this switch at all or ever, but something inside of me sort of like kicked in and I went for it. So that was, I feel like that was the first big risk and
Yeah.
gamble that I took on myself. And so I left Honda and I was no longer a paralegal and I became one of their first marketing assistants.
That's crazy. That definitely wasn't the safe bet at all. I mean,
No.
maybe, I mean, was that prior to the US Final Fantasy VII, right? So it
Yeah,
hadn't even, caught the fire that it had, right? So you didn't even know that
no.
that was a sure thing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That is a crazy story. Yeah. And so it's just like you, just something in your gut said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. Why not?
Yeah, I'm gonna go for
Yeah.
it. There was, well, to add to this, so at Honda, like many big corporations back then had already been offering like classes. The company will ask you to take some, courses or whatever. And this is really gonna tell you how old I am, but there was a course called cyberspace law.
Oh, hilarious.
I kid you not. The first booklet I was handed or I signed up for was called Cyberspace Law. And it is true that I feel like, law departments sound very, sorry to all the legal professionals out there, but I was very young. It may probably sound very boring,
Yeah.
right, to a lot
Dry
of
toast.
people. Yeah. And I was the youngest new hire in the department.
Yeah.
And I was very curious about the internet. But this handbook it said cyberspace law. So I'm like, okay, I'll sign up. So I started taking courses. Not a lot of law was, I would say, established at that time, probably. But I got a hint of like, this could be a more fast paced body of law that is going to, like, we're going to have more transactional cases coming in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
pertains to the cyberspace, the digital space,
Hmm.
the media space. So that was a little bit of a, I guess, a curiosity that I already had. That doesn't immediately connect me to video games, but I think I was already looking for something that was a little bit more fast paced.
Yeah. Well, could like a definitely a key driver that would help make a decision for you.
Yeah, but can you believe it? Cyberspace law? I'm
Yeah,
laughing right
that's
now.
hilarious. Now it's AI law, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So before I have a follow-up question that goes a little bit deeper, but I just, from a surface level, did the reality meet the fantasy when you landed?
Wow. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah. So
I didn't know what selling software, selling video games meant. This is pre-digital distribution days. I didn't
ah,
know a thing about selling into retail and distribution and how much time that takes and what all is PR and marketing, ad placement. I ended up doing a little bit of media planning for a brief time. Like, media planner was also on my title. It was on my business card. So like handling, a double digit advertising budget
yeah.
a year, like those things were all new. So I just want to say I learned everything on the job,
I was
like
gonna say trial by
everything.
fire for sure.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
the very first day, there were two. What do you call it? Those files. Not folders, but files, basically like hanging files.
Yeah, like
And
Manila
there were
folder, like
manila
yeah.
folders. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. There
Yeah.
were there were two that were given to me from the office manager, literally like as I walked in on day one. And one said E3,
Oh,
and
that's
then
awesome.
another one said, I think it either said domain registration or like website with like a question mark. And so that second one became one of my first projects because www.squaresoft.com was registered, but
Yeah.
we didn't even have a website live. It had that like we are under construction like animation,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the status of our website. And so we had a vendor candidate, but I had to take that on as my first project. I ended up hiring the website designer slash firm, which wasn't a thing yet at that
No,
time.
that's 1997, right? So
I
like,
know,
it's
yeah.
like
People
Web
were
1.0.
I know, I know. And so luckily, there was a small firm that we worked with, and the lead designer was a gamer. And so we worked with them, launched our first ever website. I bought a copy of HTML for Dummies, studied it. I was basically the webmaster for I don't know, maybe like a year and a half or 2 years for our website. So webmaster, code meaning HTML, any updates that we had to do. I think I led that for the first year or two or
It's
more.
amazing. What a resume. Well, but let's talk about that because I know, like,
Okay. Yeah.
basically you ran PR, were part of the PR, head of PR at Square Enix from 97 through 2004. So you hit Final Fantasy VII, 8, 9, 10, 11. You ran the first ever Square Enix US press conference. You produced the first US Final Fantasy concert with the LA Philharmonic. You ran the website like we just talked about. And, it's a lot of stuff. And in the middle of all that, you launched Kingdom Hearts, which is
Yes.
something I absolutely want to talk about because there's a lot of stuff in there. But I'm just curious, what was that stretch like for you? Like, what was the North American Square office actually like in those years? And also, I'm sorry, one other thing, were you there for that crazy Final Fantasy Spirits Within moment in time?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. We are some of us from our office, we were actually like supporting in every way we can. So like the way you say, I kind of had to like recapture that very quickly right now in like 10 seconds when you were saying those things. And I'm like, I'm sort of amazed at how many games we shipped and how much we did in that short amount of time as well, and
Yeah.
how we pulled it off. And this was still in the physical game, manufacturing days.
Yeah.
What was the office like? Well, so when I started, it was like a startup. We where do I start? We all wore many hats.
Yeah.
I used to say that I was a full-time marketing assistant and a part-time assistant to QA, localization, sales,
All of them.
PR, interpreting. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were very small. In fact, I still don't know if this was a joke at all or if it was real serious like talk with headquarters, but I do remember us being told that the whole purpose of this North American office is that if we don't hit 1 million units of Final Fantasy VII, that they're just going to shut it down and go back.
Yeah, right.
So,
it was an experiment for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Although we did have for anyone who's listening who thought that our small office did it all, that is not true. We had a first party deal with Sony Computer Entertainment America and Entertainment Europe at that time, SCEA and EE.
Mm-hmm.
It was for the first 5 titles. So Final Fantasy VII, Tactics, Bushido Blade. Bushido Blade, Tobal? No. Air Guides? No. Oh my gosh.
That's okay if you don't remember. I'm trying to think too.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was, we could not have done this without, Sony's help, Sony's partnership, everything. But we were still kind of the holders of just information communication coming from headquarters and working with the SEA team and E team. Since since Square did not have an office in Europe, the A team, we had to actually also oversee E. I don't know if anyone knew that, but yeah, so we worked with both Sony America team and Europe team. In fact, we did go out to our first ECTS show, which was in London that same year as well. But I just have to say, I think we did it because everyone was so committed and very passionate, very dedicated. I don't think I could do this today, and it's not good to do today. We certainly can't. But as a backup, some of us had sleeping bags under our
I was going to say that was when crunch was, sort of like whatever, it was an accepted thing. Yeah,
exactly. So, but we grew once we, hit the mark that we needed to. In fact, if I remember correctly, Final Fantasy VII was the first or the fastest to reach 1 million units title on PlayStation that year. So one day we show up in the office and Andrew House, back then, who was, I believe, VP of Marketing at SCEA, he had sent us a big package, and it was a framed Final Fantasy cover art with, the cloud stance. And so he sent us a really beautiful frame, and so we that afternoon we celebrated at a nearby restaurant. And not that guaranteed us for the next X years, but I think we felt like we did the job, mission accomplished. And we already had so many games in the works, so we knew that this was the first big goal that we needed to reach. But then so many other titles were already in the pipeline to localize and publish the next year and coming years.
It's amazing. Before we move on, Brave Fencer, was that one of the?
Yeah.
Brave Fencer Musashi.
Brave Fencer Musashi. Oh my God, you remember that one?
Yeah, of course I do. I remember wandering the halls of PlayStation at that time, SCEA, before Final Fantasy VII came out, and David Bamberger pulling me into his office to show me, Final Fantasy VII before it came out or whatever. So yeah, I was there.
Yes.
I remember those. Good times.
Good times
for sure. Very exciting. Talk about, we don't really, that wasn't even on my bingo card to talk to today, but Square, picking PlayStation as their partner versus Nintendo, that was a big deal. Were you there for that?
No, I wasn't. Yeah. I wasn't because, like I said, Final Fantasy VII had already shipped in Japan.
Yeah, so it was already a thing. Got it.
Yeah, it was already a thing, but I will say I've sat in so many interviews where that question was asked to either creators or executives. And
yeah, it's famous.
Yes, it's a famous story. But even though we're a startup, so I think I still have my facts straight. There was one person so Square had I'll say maybe like a satellite office near Nintendo up in Washington State before this California office. And it was primarily to kind of act as the Squaresoft title customer service staff. I don't know how many people were dedicated to Square titles, but there's actually one person who I believe was kind of like offered to move down and join this new Squaresoft US operations and office. So there's one person who has history from before this California office who moved down from Washington. I heard that he had all these written notes and manuals and everything. He put them in one box, and him and his wife moved from Washington to California. So he's actually one of our first hires, first employees. But besides that, everyone did not have previous history from
Yeah.
Square of the Nintendo days. Yeah.
Yeah. Super interesting. It's a crazy industry.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Kingdom Hearts. It's one of my all-time favorite franchises. I love it so much. I remember talking to you about it at some E3 before it came out, which is crazy. But so Kingdom Hearts was announced at E3 in 2001 by Square EA, right? Square Electronic
Yes.
Arts. And you had about 18 months from the E3 unveil to the North American launch. And I'm curious, like when you first heard the pitch, Final Fantasy characters fighting alongside Donald Duck and Goofy, like what was your reaction personally?
Well, our head of US office called a company-wide meeting, and we were told that this is a new project that Square is going to be announcing. Not the E3 announcement, but the headquarters announcement.
Yeah.
The first real announcement. And I think, well, I thought it was a joke, and I think most of us in the meeting, I think most of us thought it was a joke. Like, how could this be?
Yeah.
So that was our first reaction, but we found out that it was happening. It's true. And even like how it happened, like how could this even happen? And so what I do remember, there's a humongous amount of work that was involved, even just on the US side, which, we're not even developing. We're the publishing office. We're the sales and marketing office, but there was an enormous amount of work involved. For me personally, it was, I think that's the title that really helped me establish a closer relationship with Tetsuya Nomura and the surrounding staff members. He had been character designing for Final Fantasy, obviously 7 before, but also, 7 and then 10 and, Rinoa and all those characters. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts was going to be his baby, his thing. So I spent a significant amount of time with Nomura-san himself outside of development. So whenever he had to come stateside to either just spend time at Disney or even voice recording or all the events and E3s that we asked him to come, I was usually right there with him, alongside him, also being his interpreter. But just the amount of, I thought just doing Final Fantasy work was already a huge weight, which it was for our office, our team, because, we're still living in these days where we didn't have enough face-to-face communication, contact, and it was really solely built on this relationship and trust that the Japan headquarters office and the US office was building slowly and surely. But we had to just really learn how to communicate and build the relationship. So, but by the time Kingdom Hearts was announced, I think we did that as a US operations and a team. But this was on a different level because now it was almost like we have an IP that we need to protect ourselves, which was like the Final Fantasy, but anything that Square makes. But then we had another gigantic global company that we needed to be very, very careful and, not step on anyone's toes, not cross any lines. The thickest brand guidelines probably that we had to go by. I was going to say
lots of do's and don'ts, or just don'ts.
Exactly. So I do remember, like back then, our cubicle was pretty big, and what do you call them? Just binders, right? Like 2-inch ring binders.
Yeah.
I think just for the Kingdom Hearts title, for the original title, I think I had like 10 or 12 or 15 like 2-inch ring binders where every asset that was basically approved and given to us as the marketing team, the sales and PR team, I on my desk was basically the master set of asset and files, but we would print everything on one page on the front and the back. Like, so, you know, you have a Sora and then how many variations of Sora, like we printed that on each page, put it in the clear file, put it in the binder. And so anyone on our team can come around me in my cubicle and double check if they're using the same, like, are we using the correct asset? And then talking about PR, like when we release a certain set of screenshots or assets, that's like numbered and, you know, tabulated and has a table of contents. So if anyone needs to refer back to like, what did we give out in this press kit? Like there's a dedicated binder just for that.
Oh, the analog days. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was, I had a lot of fun. I think all of us on the team, you know, had a lot of fun. I would say the quality of the game experience, not that we had a lot to say and we like our voice, I'm not going to say our voices were never heard, but I think we trusted, you know, our dev team to do the best job. And I got to sort of check in maybe a little bit more frequently because of meetings we had at Disney here at headquarters, and we would have to kind of show like in progress builds and whatnot. But going to voice sessions, I will say from a PR promotion standpoint, one of the things that we had never done at Square at that time, and I think it was pretty rare for any Japanese company to be doing something like this, is we did do a red carpet video game premiere event for Kingdom Hearts 1, and then we sort of upgraded that experience for Kingdom Hearts 2. So they're both held in LA, but thanks in part to, you know, having voice actors who were, some were already, you know, established Hollywood talent, and having that sort of angle made sense for us to do a red carpet event. So that was a very challenging but very exciting time for us to do something that was never done at Square.
Yeah, I mean, the franchise took off and did really well. And it was like, I don't know, I'm trying to find a good analogy, like two things that you wouldn't think taste good together actually are amazing, right. You know? But, you know, I can imagine, or at least with the first title, when you first start figuring out like the PR plan and the marketing plan, like it must have been like, I don't know, either it must have been a problem, like how are we going to solve this? Because they're so different audiences, like, you know, the Disney family audience and the JRPG people, like at that time, they're very two different things, right?
Yes.
So like I can imagine it could be a very like, how do we solve this? How do we figure out this segmented, you know, audience demographics and make it work for everybody?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And it's bringing back memories. Some of it has left, so I'm trying hard to.
It's okay.
I think one of the, I mean, you said it. I think to add to that though, to add to the challenge of, you know, marrying these two, I'll just say IPs, but like universes and worlds, because we weren't using Final Fantasy characters. These are brand new characters, you know, being made for Kingdom Hearts, but let's just call it like we had the Final Fantasy essence and character and just world being sort of laying the foundation for what's to come, right? So Disney Interactive at that time, it was Disney Interactive, then it went to Buena Vista Games, I believe. You know, Disney was not, they didn't have a significant, I think I'm okay to say, like existence in the video game space at that time.
Yeah.
Right? As a publisher, as a label, there weren't, it wasn't seen as like, oh, I'm going to wait for the next Disney Interactive video game.
That's very fair to say.
Former Disney Interactive employees and fellow partners I work with, but it was that combined with the family-friendly nature and world that we had to keep. It's an E for everyone rated title. Maybe the later ones went to E10, I'm not sure. But it was trying to balance this love that everyone has for Disney and what it represents and how they relate to Disney characters. Whereas, so for them, we're kind of like the newcomer and they may not even know too much about who is this character with spiky hair and big shoes, and like, we're not familiar with them. And then from our side, it was like, well, the Disney audience may not know who we are and where we come from. So how do we marry that? But in the end, I think, at its core, we had to aim the people who were going to be our end user. So the video game sort of audience and our and the world became our main target audience. Not to say that we're leaving Disney behind. And I think we were confident enough at that time, having shipped a number of Final Fantasies already and a number of non-Final Fantasy games, and our reputation for delivering quality game experiences was already at a high level that the video game crowd and the journalists and the press like yourselves, even though you probably had a big question mark, as soon as you saw maybe the trailer and the first demo at an E3 or something, you felt that this was going to feel like a Squaresoft game, a Square game. So yeah, I don't remember all the details of, I'm sure we kind of butted heads with some Disney people on the marketing campaign and the execution, but and I remember individuals that were always in the room. I will say it was always a big group. And so we had a fairly large group too, but Disney was Disney Consumer Products and the interactive people and the, people that we normally didn't have to sort of like try to appeal to and appease and, kind of sell our product into. So it was just a number of loops of communication that we had with the Disney team. Shuji was on the Disney side. Shuji Utsumi.
That's right. He was during that time, right?
During that time, yes. He was head of Disney Asia, APAC. And I don't know if this story is, I'm sure you can find it somewhere online, but the idea of Kingdom Hearts didn't come from like Disney headquarters. Like it wasn't a US based or Western based idea. It was that Squaresoft at that time and Disney, their Asia office, we were in the same building in Tokyo, in Meguro.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
You didn't know this?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we were on different floors. And so the story goes, and maybe Nomura-san, you might correct me, but Tetsuya Nomura and the producer Shinji Hashimoto and Utsumi-san, they would always see each other, and they were in the elevator frequently enough to, say more than a hello and maybe have coffee or tea downstairs, whatever. So that's where the seed was sort of planted, and then it actually became
it's amazing.
Kingdom Hearts. At least that's the story that I was told.
Right. Happy accident, really.
Yes.
Yeah, it's for those new listeners who have not gone through the category or the catalog of podcasts that we put out. Shuji and Maya Rogers from Tetris did a panel with me back in March of this year. This is 2026 as of this recording. And you should absolutely go watch that or listen to it where you can find. Shameless plug. He's a great person, Shuji. I love him so much. And he's a character as well. So one other random thing that's just funny for me, we as Off Base, my agency, has worked on Kingdom Hearts. And one of our feathers in our cap, claim to fame, is that we were given it the 11th hour, because you know how that's how things work in this industry. we were asked to take some screenshots of environments, from the different environments in the game, the different Disney environments, like Winnie the Pooh's tree house, or Halloween Town or whatever it was, from the
Yes.
different Disney IPs, and take those screenshots and repaint them in a very large scale format for some event like E3 or whatnot. And so we had to actually make them up-res and make them look more Disney-esque than PlayStation 2-esque.
Right.
And we're able to do that and then get it approved like the very first time, which is unheard
wow.
of. Anyway, humble brag.
Nice.
Not so humble brag. So you were at Square Enix for some crazy stuff, my friend, but at some point you decided it was time to leave. And so I know you moved over to XSEED in 2004 as part of a group of people, I think around 15 people, including J.I., Jun Iwasaki, Ken Berry, Sean Montgomery, Kenji Minura, and more. So I believe I read Kotaku framed it as a coordinated departure over how to grow the U.S. business, quote unquote. I'm just curious, was it really that clean? I'm not asking you to spill tea, but I would love to know, what was the impetus, and what was the moment that you personally decided, I'm going to make another, take a leap of faith, I guess.
That is, yeah. Thank God for not having social media back then, right?
Right? Oh God, yeah.
All these stories are buried somewhere, and it's hard it's hard to go look for.
Right. Jason Totilo was just a little pup at that time,
I know. Well, I'll take like a half step back. So 2004 was a big year. If I remember, like even from 03 to 04, mobile games, we're talking about non-smartphone like flip phones, so we're talking about
Java.
Partnering up with a Verizon or whoever, or like mobile game developers were becoming a thing. The industry was going through a new potential market phase. Me personally, from 03 to 04, my biggest thing was, as a project, I wanted to bring the Final Fantasy orchestral concert to the US. So I was like so focused on just getting this done. And so we luckily made that happen, thanks to all the connections, power, resources, everything, and everyone who believed in that project. We were able to pull it off. So E3 2004, we had a press conference and a concert in the same day at the same venue. So it was kind of like it was at the Walt Disney Concert Hall in LA, which is right by the E3 venue. And so the AM session, the morning session, was that we did a press conference, and then we basically swapped the stage to make it into an evening concert. We succeeded, and in fact, the president at that time, I remember saying that we're only going to approve budget for one night. It was kind of a combined E3 budget. For us back then, it was huge. It was gigantic, but it was approved. And he's like, if you succeed with this one night only show, then we will consider taking this on a tour, because they knew that concept, because I was already working in Japan. They were already doing Final Fantasy concert tours, Dragon Quest concert tours. So they knew it was working in Japan, but this was kind of like a test. And tickets sold out. We were in the New York Times, where local broadcast stations even came out that evening. So it was a success, and I'm very happy that then the business model of turning this into a tour was approved, and now we still see it, on tour, right? Everywhere in Europe and America, and I
Huge.
think maybe even South America. Yeah. But anyway, for me and some of the names that you mentioned, we felt some things were not maybe looking in the direction or tracking the way that we wanted to um, continue with our US business operations and strategy. So, over a course of several months, I mean, the statute of limitations have passed, right? I'm going to keep it clean, but we did decide to leave. I know it left a pretty big hole in the sales, marketing, and operations side, but we
Yeah.
decided to leave. It didn't take a handful of us too long to get back together, and we decided and committed to starting up a new business called XSEED. Now it's Marvelous USA.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, but the main goal and purpose for XSEED was that back then there were a number of Japanese quality titles that did not have a chance or an opportunity maybe to get localized and get distributed and sold
Yeah.
outside of Japan because they didn't have operations in America, or they just didn't know who to go to. And
Right. There's
back
no
then
infrastructure.
there wasn't. And back
Yeah.
then it was a little bit more strict. Like Square will only publish Square games. Capcom only publishes like largely still true. But if you were not a Square or a Capcom or Namco or Konami or whoever, and you were a small to mid-sized video game developer and publisher in Japan, who do you
Stay in
go
Japan.
to? Yeah, get it out there. So we wanted to serve as that entity to basically, get the license, localize it, and then sell it into North America retailers and eventually to fans who are waiting for localized versions of these games. So that was really the main goal, and why we started XSEED. To get it off the ground, though, there was a little bit of time. We can't all of a sudden say like, "Hey, we're going to do this for you." We needed to kind of get the business up and running. So on the side, we offered marketing and business sort of consultation for Japanese companies who were still having maybe a little bit of difficulty marketing their video games in the North American market. So we provided those services on the side while getting the titles lined up to localize and then publish.
I mean, that was, and I think still to this day is a huge need,
It is.
even more so now, maybe with China, China's proliferation to the US. Did it feel like because when you start, did it feel like you were back at the early Square days, like back in like a startup,
It was a total startup. We were in a tiny office, and the cubicles were now like 1/4 the size of the Square office.
No fancy Hawaii offices.
Oh my gosh, no, we're bare bones, like minimal office. It did. So that would be my second sort of like, sort of taking a gamble on like, let's see how it goes. But because we had all worked together for a number of years, I was less maybe worried or concerned about that aspect. We worked well together, right? So it was more about like getting new business. How do you do that? Because with Squaresoft USA office, we were, automatically kind of getting titles from headquarters. Yeah. But this was totally new. We had to actually go and get and secure the titles we wanted to localize and do the business for them in North America.
Yeah. Like back in those days, absolutely, with Square, with Capcom, with Konami, it felt like the US headquarters or HQ, whatever they called them, were literally more just like looked at as like order takers.
Yeah, it's like right, exactly. Yeah.
Just so funny how, the times have changed, and it, not in a bad or different, it's just different. different way.
Yeah.
Although, these days really feels like there's a resurgence coming out of Japan with some just amazing creativity and some killer games, which I love. So you were a founder, but you end up leaving, right, around 2006.
Yes.
Before, kind of the localization catalogs I would think most fans associate with the XSEED name, whether it's Ease, Rune Factory, Trails. What was the reasoning? Why did you decide to go?
Why did
Yeah.
I?
Oh, you did?
No, I did leave about 2 years in. I the thing that kind of hit me at that time, although I was enjoying what I was doing, I felt like I also wanted to see how I can sort of use my skills. And now at that time, what, 9, 10 years experience in the game industry, I
Yeah.
wanted to see if I can apply that to a different field. I think it would have been very close to games, so something in the broader entertainment area, or maybe even automotive, or maybe something else. But I wanted to see how I can sort of stretch my marketing background, but more on the like the bilingual, bicultural. Like who else needs someone to help them kind of bridge the communication and bring them together. So it was a very, very difficult decision.
Can imagine.
But
Yeah.
I ended up leaving and went independent. That was the first time I went independent. I'm like, I'm freelance. I don't even know what that means, but I'm freelance. And I figured, like, if this doesn't work out, I mean, maybe hopefully someone in the video game industry, another Japanese publisher, I can apply for a position. So I was like, okay, let me try it for maybe a year or two and see how that goes.
Well, that was in 2006, and I don't think you've looked back since. And we were just having a conversation the other day, and I wanted to bring it up just because, to your point, like where you were just like, I'm going to broaden my horizons. You are a creative thinker, my friend. I remember having that conversation about, like, you're like, I'm going to rebrand Kikkoman soy sauce. And I was like, absolutely, you should do that.
Oh my God. That is, yeah. Hi, Kikkoman. If anyone is watching from that soy sauce brand, yes. I know. I wanted to rebrand like Japanese, not old brands, but I don't know, the packaging and the messaging and just how much more appealing some of these brands would be. And I remember walking into we were at your office in San Francisco, right?
Probably.
And I just went down a list of Japanese brands that I wanted to rebrand.
I love it.
Yeah.
So anyway, you've been doing this for like 20 years now.
Yes.
You have a name, but it's not very prevalent, called Cassis. You don't have a website, from what I could tell.
No.
You don't have a client list anywhere. But what is really interesting, though, especially from a games perspective, if you look at Moby Games, you have almost 60 credits over that time period. So there's Tecmo, Q Entertainment, Playground Games, so many projects that most people probably wouldn't even know that you've touched. So what is Cassis? And what have you actually been doing for these last 20 years?
I know, right? Yeah, 20 years seems like a very long time. I don't. I guess I can say it's somewhat intentional. I think in the 20 years I've ordered like a box of business cards like this, like 3 times. I don't know. So maybe I'm just not good at pitching or selling my services, but I've just been very, very, very lucky to have, friends in the industry suggest me, refer me, and give me work all these years. I did start out with just one client. and it was actually Q Entertainment with
Hmm.
Shuji
Yeah.
and Tetsuya Mizuguchi. So,
Love it.
in fact, XSEED,
Luminous.
yes, yeah, XSEED was, we had them as a client at XSEED, but when I said I was going to leave XSEED, the rest of the team basically said, you need to take it, you have to take it because you are the main person on the account, because it was mostly PR and communications with their publishing partners they had at that time. So it's like Buena Vista Games, Namco US, and so they just didn't have someone to kind of liaise between the studio, Q Entertainment, and their partners. So I stepped in and helped out with that. So I took Q Entertainment as my very first client. Um, and I it's still even today hard for me to describe in one word or even 10 words what I do. So maybe that's why I'm hesitant to even have a website or to
Yeah.
publish a client list. And part of it is also because a lot of work I do, start off as like all NDA, and sometimes they're not necessarily tied directly to like an in-game credit type of work.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah.
I do a lot of, behind the scenes sort of business to business or business to creative or creative to creative. And the big common factor is that it almost involves a Japan or Japanese
Hmm.
creator or studio or company aspect, and a
Yeah.
Western studio company creator, agent, whatever. And a lot of those things are done privately behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for me to kind of say what I do in a way that clicks with the majority of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at you as like the secret weapon, and also, I mean, it goes back to that, like the very first thing we talked about, like, you growing
Yeah.
up straddling those two cultures, like
Hmm.
that is really kind of like the secret sauce, right? Um, so, wow. I mean, yeah, you're like, you're the behind the scenes doing all that crazy stuff no one knows about, that no one's not
Oh,
allowed,
thank
they're
you.
allowed to know about.
You know
And
what?
then
The funny thing is, you're not the first.
I'm
You're not the
sure.
person. Yeah, the secret weapon and the secret. Well, yeah, secret weapon, and because for some amount of time I was working with Team Ninja,
Hmm.
and
Yeah. Tecmo.
ninjas are very hidden, right? You never know where a ninja is going to show up. So for a certain amount of time, my nickname was that I'm like the female ninja, because I
Love it.
sometimes I show up in places that people don't expect me to show up, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, Kyoko, like I didn't know you were, working with this partner and trying to negotiate this thing." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I've been helping behind the scenes, kind of thing." But yeah, so it's funny that you say secret weapon. So I do sort of like to have that layer, when it comes to my work, maybe.
It's amazing. And, maybe it's good. Like you get to go in, you get in, you get to do some work, and then, you don't have to, the commitment of the long term, right? You can do on something else that's exciting for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. But I remember,
There.
we worked together quite a bit when you were during that stint at Tecmo,
Hmm.
with Team Ninja and with Johnny Nada and Tom Lee, of course, and
Hmm.
Ninja Gaiden and
Yep.
all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
Team Ninja was for a while. I would say majority like pre, Koei Tecmo days.
yeah.
Um, and I have been lucky to work with many Japanese creators and their core teams. This Since you mentioned Moby Games, I haven't checked recently, but and this is kind of like, you know one generation before today, or one and a half generations before, but with Team Ninja, when I think I started when Itagaki-san was still with us.
Mm,
And
R.I.P.
Inafune-san was still with Capcom. I
Yeah.
worked on a few projects that they collaborated with Western studios.
Hmm.
I've had a lot of opportunities to first like be asked to interpret for a number of Japanese creators, and then a lot of times from there it kind of snowballs into,
Yeah, it spreads.
can we call you back for this is happening, and we love to have someone who already understands what we're doing, the game concept, et cetera, et cetera. And so I have been very lucky to be, called back into projects. In fact, some development projects 2 years in, 3 years in, I'm still kind of like their go-to interpreter, but also like a relationship manager to keep the two sides going and communicating and all that. So yeah, again, it's hard to sort of define my role because it is a
Yeah,
very case by case basis, and it differs. Yeah.
that's cool. I mean, is there, across this time period, are there any projects that you would call out that like you're most proudest of?
Oh wow.
I mean, there's so many.
That's a
Yeah,
yeah, so many, only because it's fairly recent, maybe. The two most recent one is Enhance.
yeah.
And when, yeah, Tetsuya Mizuguchi he took a little bit of a break after leaving Q Entertainment. And we weren't in like sort of frequent contact while he was on hiatus, but when he decided to sort of come back and start Enhance, it was actually Mark McDonald, who we all know. Um,
Hmm.
Mark McDonald and Tetsuya Mizuguchi, they were already talking about a project, and he knew that I had previously worked with Miz when he was at Q Entertainment. And so yeah, it was really just the three of us when Enhance started. I mean, Miz founded the company, and Mark and I kind of helped from the side as like the biggest cheerleader. And what are
Yeah.
you going to do? What do you want to do? And so I onboarded very early, and up until this past June, I oversaw the publishing side, the marketing side, just seeing it from three people, and now having actually a publishing team, and everyone's remote, mostly on the non-Japan side, but growing that team and growing the business and having shipped great games
Yeah.
is definitely a highlight. And then the more recent project would be, Forza Horizon 6. And for the first time, officially being credited or called and serving the role as a cultural consultant, which is not something that I have on my business card. I
Yeah.
think it's a foundation layer that comes with the work that I've been doing for these last 20 plus years. But that has never been my main like title, and I don't go out saying like I am a cultural consultant. It was always more of I have that as my base layer foundation of who I am. But then on top of it, usually it's like a marketing project or a biz dev project or interpreting and all that. So I've always seen it as kind of like a dual layer, you know, uh, I don't know, role that I normally
Hmm.
play. But this one was like, no, you're going to be the cultural consultant for this game that is going to be staged and set in Japan. And to my surprise, the studio had no Japanese speakers, no Japanese person on the team. They're based in the UK, Playground Games. And
Yep.
so when I was offered, or before it was decided on, I was like very excited because of my love for cars and
I was gonna say,
motorsports
what a
and
perfect
what
marriage, right?
yeah. But at the same time I was like, Okay, I am putting all of what I've done in this industry, like pretty much everything, on the line here, and it's a humongous amount of pressure. Like they viewed me as their Japanese ambassador,
Yeah.
and that's a lot. That's that's a loaded role to
Well, yeah.
fill
I
and
mean,
to serve.
if it's a heavy weight
It's
to carry,
heavy.
right? Because
Yeah,
we know
yeah.
how passionate the fans can be,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so you don't want to
Oh
mess that
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But I would definitely want to talk about Forza. So I think it's a great segue into it. But I did want to take a moment just to point something out that maybe you already know, but I'm sensing a pattern here where you come in, you jump into a brand new company it's in their startup phase. You sit there, you get to be there for a while, help build it up, and then you look for something. You go on to your next grand journey.
That's
Um,
interesting. You know
yeah,
what? Thanks for saying that because I don't think
yeah,
I saw that in myself.
yeah. I mean, it's very clear to me. Anyway, so yeah, so let's talk about Forza. So I know during my research, I came across, and I think you had even maybe given me a link at some point that Xbox Wire Japan ran a really long interview with you. Oh, by the way, I was like super fanboying when was it the showcase, whatever, when Forza
The
um,
Dev Direct.
did their dev direct to see you
Yeah.
like on camera, speaking. It was so cool. I need your autograph, by the way. Anyway, so Japan, they ran this really great interview with you. It's probably the only substantial interview that exists with you on the
Yep.
internet. Um, and anyway, you say something I kind of want to kind of take a moment with. It's that your job wasn't to point out, quote unquote, this is wrong. Your job was to really explain why is it that way, even if it took longer. So, um, would you talk more about that? Like, what is a cultural consultant on a game like Forza actually doing day to day, and why is it that way look like in practice? I guess.
Right. That is a great question. And we're recording this in, I can say, right, August. I actually just a few weeks ago did my first ever speaking engagement. Is that what you call it? Um,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
at SEDEC, which is sort of
Sedek.
like the
Yep.
GDC of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke about this. Of course, I talked about it in Japanese, so now I have to kind of respond to this in English. But I really had to think about how I can explain to the audience who probably has maybe never worked with a cultural consultant, or they really just have no idea, like, how deep do you go, how involved are you with like art or character, or like, do you even know your cars? Like, I didn't know how to even begin the talk. So now that I've spent some time preparing for the talk and having done the talk, I'll do my best in answering this question. And first of all, I don't think there's like a right or wrong, or like this is the correct approach and the not so correct or not so smart approach. For me, what it was is so once I found out there were no Japanese speakers and there was nobody who is Japanese, and I think at that time there is almost 100 people in pre-production.
Sure.
So that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, wow, because it's a team largely, I don't know how many people maybe have left or departed after their previous game, but it's when you think about a team who's been working on the series for a very long time together, like they can talk the talk and they
Yeah.
communicate very well. And so I'm thinking they must have already done a significant amount of homework and research in pre-production. And then here I come and I'm kind of like dropped into this group of almost 100 people. So the first thing was I wanted to find out how much research they've done
Mm-hmm.
and at what level, or like what is the entry point for me to onboard myself and to have as kind of smooth and forward looking and facing conversation discussions as possible. And why I say that is because this team has been working on this franchise for since 2012 is the first one. So almost 10 years already, right?
Yeah.
And they hold the vision to the game. I don't come from a game development background. I am no artist, engineer, whatever. I knew that they already knew themselves what they wanted to make. So they hold the vision, they hold the concept of what they want to create. But so I wasn't going to have this sort of large creative say input role, and I didn't want to cross those lines, although I would have input. How do I say this in kind of layered ways, right? I brought ideas, I brought even names and ideas that maybe they may not have known or recognized, or just something that I knew was not going to like rock the boat in a way. Like, I'm safe to say these things. But going back to, yeah, the figuring out the entry point of how much they already knew, and depending on the question or topic that is posted into this, I had a dedicated channel on their teams, and all
That's
these
cool.
random topics would get posted. And my job is to answer them, respond to them to as much as possible to the length and the detail that I can. But when I do that, and getting back to trying to answer your question, I took this assignment as partially like informing and trying to educate so that they also learn at the same time they are creating assets or making these decisions. I didn't want to just be because Kyoko said so.
Right.
And so
It has
we're
to be
going to
this
take
way.
this. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, for example, one of the first weekly meetings we had, the topic of a kimono came up. And the question was, would it be okay is it okay for you to be wearing a kimono and driving cars?
It's a great
And
question.
that's
Yeah.
that's a great question,
Yeah.
right? Okay, that is a great question. But this is like my first weekly meeting after doing an on-site. But I'm still this is early days. I'm still onboarding to the tone, the depth of questions are not even deep at all, like surface level questions. And I'm like, okay, that is a great question, but I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to give you 5 more questions back as to why you're asking this question.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand there's no build. I don't have the narrative, the story, the scenario in front of me. I have not seen character designs yet. I don't know what the map entails. I don't know what regions we're going to be driving in. So for someone on the team to ask me, is it okay to be wearing a kimono when you're driving, is a very loaded question already.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, what is the context? What is the situation? Are we talking about just costume design? Is this going to be part of a side story? Kimonos come with footwear that are not really meant for driving. So I don't know if this is, a good example, but it was those things that it's like when you're tossed a question, if I can answer it easily and it makes sense in one round, one exchange, or maybe 2 exchanges in the threads and teams, then sure, we can close it out. But oftentimes, especially in the first 6, 8, 9, even up until the first year, oftentimes the topics that were raised needed more explaining, more
some
background.
Context.
Yeah, more context. And I always had to remind the team, it's like, yes, I'm taking more time. And in the end, only 5% of what we just talked about is actually going to matter in the game. But now you kind of know why we landed on that answer and you have background information, right?
Yeah,
And
because
keep in mind also, there's so many different disciplines I'm also talking with. So the art team could be asking about something, and then the sound team or the game design team asks me a related question 3 weeks later, and I'm like, is that related to this thing
hmm
that I already spent like 3 weeks before that talking to the art team about? And so I kind of had to like connect the dots as we were moving forward.
yeah,
And it wasn't really until like, okay, now I know the map too, and I know the regions, and I know the day trip stories and when they're going to be unlocked or when you're going to interact with these characters. Like it wasn't until then that I started to ask less, but I saw the fuller picture and the more details that I needed to know in
yeah.
order to give them the right guidance and advice. So I would say like year one was a lot of like help me help you. So I'm not going to answer this right away right now, but you have to help me to answer your question, and then we'll land hopefully at what we think is like the reasonable or right or correct answer.
Well, I mean, it says a lot. First of all, that the team didn't just have you come in and do a presentation on Japanese car culture and call it a day, right? And like, oh, we've got what we need. Thank you. You were there from like kind of beginning to end or close to it, which is really impressive. Clearly, the Metacritic says that that you were a success. I know it's like sitting at 90, which is insane, and it's a great game. And your
That's
mark
all
on it,
for the team. That's all
yeah,
back to the team.
absolutely. But that authenticity that that you helped bring,
Mhm.
really is part of that. So you should definitely acknowledge that. And I know stuff that I read in the article that was written about you or that interviewed, stuff that you know I love Japan, and I'm certainly not as fanatical about cars as you are, but I do love car culture as well. But like stuff like I'd never heard of, um, Decatora,
Oh, like the subculture. Yeah.
yeah, the Shakoten, all of that kind of that stuff. So I think it's really, really interesting that like you were able to come in and help bring that level of education and in a way that was impactful. They understood it. You didn't just say this is how it should be. To your point, you spent the time to grow and educate, and I think the product at the end was much better for it. So yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Thanks to
Did
the
you
team
find any
for.
roadblocks in that process? Were people open to hear, your perspective?
I think in large part, yeah. I wouldn't say roadblocks, but there were some elements that we kind of really had to go through more than a few rounds to kind of get it. And it's not just because of the lack of, understanding the culture. It's just a foreign concept, or
Yeah.
it's just not in, you know, your DNA, the Western person's, DNA. So, this will happen with any project, but I would keep on seeing kind of like the same sort of like, not a mistake, but it's like it's a little off. We need to go back to this. A little off. We need, like, some things that would come up more frequently, things like that. But I
Yeah.
don't think there were any major roadblocks. If there were roadblocks or maybe like over the top crazy ideas, they all still fit into the fantasy world of Forza Horizon and what
Yeah.
what a Horizon experience is, right? I
Yeah.
mean, Horizon, the series exists because of what you can do, how you
It's a
can
video game.
experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, what could sound like a pretty over the top crazy idea on a regular conversation here can somehow still land really well, in Horizon. So I don't think there were any roadblocks. It was just I took a lot of things as a really great challenge, even for myself, and to learn from it as well, because I still remember, and I've said this in the interview, but within the first couple of weeks, I just set the kind of expectation level. It's like, thank you for
Mm,
viewing me as your Japanese ambassador, but like, I'm not your walking encyclopedia, or like, I'm not your
yeah.
Japanese Wikipedia. And what that means is like, culture in Japan is it's endless, and it's
Yeah.
very deep, and it's very layered. So if in one single weekly call you're going to ask me about kimono, and then 30 minutes in you're going to start talking to me about mecha and robots, like,
Yeah.
hold on,
Yeah.
like, I'm going to need a little break. Let me switch. let me
Context switch.
let me get
Yeah.
exactly, like, I need to
Yeah.
get into gear. And a lot of times I was just upfront with them. It's like, let me go back and do my homework, because this real time discussion we're having is great, but I'm going to take it back, and then
Yeah.
I'll
Be
come back to
thoughtful.
you. Yeah.
It's the Japanese way.
It's the Japanese way. Okay.
Everything is, precise, thoughtful, non-reactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, I think I have like two more questions. So thank you for your
Sure.
precious time today. This has been lovely to talk to you. But you've closed a 10 plus year chapter at Enhance.
Mm.
Very recently, just in June,
Mhm.
you wrapped up executive producing One of One, which we didn't even talk about, which is a
Oh.
documentary
Yes.
about NATO auto engineering in last September, which is really cool. That's a 3-generation Tokyo classic car restoration shop. It was released on Apple TV Plus and Prime. You and I have been having some conversations, I guess candid ones lately, about kind of state of the games industry, what it is and what it isn't. So I'm curiously, like, genuinely, what are you paying attention to right now, and what does the next Kyoko chapter look like for you?
Oh, what am I paying attention to? Um, I don't know about you. Well, maybe part of this podcast too, Greg, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the games business, the game space and the industry has grown so much since when you began and when I began,
Oh
that
yeah.
I feel like I only know a very small slice of the pie, and the pie keeps growing and growing, right? So honestly, I'm just overwhelmed. It's sometimes just hard to keep up with what's going on,
Yeah.
from a regional perspective,
Hmm.
a what games are even being shipped, like a discoverability, um,
Technology, AI, of
technology,
course. Yeah.
publishers, developers, indies, um, people from outside the games business wanting to join our space,
Yeah.
vice versa. I even remember I was thinking about this, and maybe I should have brought this up earlier. Like, the word transmedia, and
Hmm.
if you remember, like, there was one era where we used it quite frequently. It's not today's era, but there was one time when we used it. It kind of, like, I wouldn't say it died, but then it sort of went away, right? And then now it's
Yeah.
back. And then I'm also seeing, maybe because of the cultural thing, the anime space and the manga space and the crossover there,
Yep.
and the transmedia efforts and strategic sort of partnerships that companies are announcing, like, almost left and right. Every day, every week, I'm seeing something new. And
Yeah.
it's expanded so much that I don't even know where I'm supposed to be sometimes, and
Yeah.
how I can, I still want to contribute in some way, shape, or form. I think I can just by, for a little while longer from that cultural perspective, but I don't even know where to place myself
Yeah.
sometimes.
I mean, I get it. It's things move very fast these days. So it is really hard to keep up. And there's not a lot of solid footing at the
Yeah.
moment, and so it's hard to kind of like plant your feet on the ground and say, okay, what's going on here? Like, because things are just changing rapidly, whether
Yeah.
it's because of technology, the generational shift in social media capturing the people's attention more than ever, all of the things. So yeah, I'm right there with you first and foremost.
Is it just because we're old, right?
Maybe, but I thank you. Because we're old, I forgot my point. But my point was going to be, I think, so yeah, there is all that, but there is a lot to be said for having the expertise, the knowledge, having lived it, kind of like having been there, in the room and in the industry for as long as we have, some people might say, oh, you're just a dinosaur, like, you're not like with it. But I think, all of that knowledge that we've accumulated, all the things that we've seen, the trends, the shifts,
Right.
the ups and the downs, like we've been there, we've ridden those waves.
Yeah.
And I think, that is invaluable, honestly. And
I
yeah,
agree, because I do find myself in recent years, and as recent as like this talk I gave in Japan, and I've been feeling it myself, and I'm sure this is a sign of feeling old and sign of age too. That if there's anything, any knowledge, anything I can leave behind and share, I would like to.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know, how applicable that is going to be for someone who's, let's say, just coming into the industry, or
Mhm.
having been in the industry for 5, 6, maybe even 10 years. I don't know, but it does feel like if there's any value, if there's any asset that I can sort of leave behind, is
Yeah,
is even having a conversation, even having a talk. So there's this one girl who came up to me after the setup talk, and she said it's her first year at Sega at headquarters, and I saw a little bit of me in her,
yeah, yeah,
and just the
Kyoko.
questions she asked, and um, not being afraid to speak up and ask these questions. But she did say one last thing, is like, if you were to give advice to someone like me, what would you say? Or like, what is the one thing you've maintained and kept, sort of like true to yourself, kind of thing? And it struck me at that moment. It's like, yes, okay, I've been in the industry almost 30 years. Like, maybe there's one or two things that I can share and leave behind. So
Do you want to say
yeah.
what that advice was, or is that like would you
Well,
rather not?
I'd rather not, but I think
Yeah,
one I thank you. I think maybe because we're, talking here, and you bringing me on this podcast is like, I didn't study to become who I am, and
hmm,
I don't have great tips on how to train to become what I do. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
feel very not so useful to people who ask me these questions, because I didn't take like a path that someone can copy and paste. I think it is a bit unique,
yeah,
but I, I've made enough mistakes. I have enough failures, and I've learned from them. And I guess one thing, this is not the answer I gave her, but the more you experience, the more you realize like what you're good at, And so if you
Yeah.
could just take that with some level of confidence each way, people start to hopefully recognize what you're good at. And that's kind of who I am today. Is
Yeah.
I discovered over time that I'm good at something. And so it's not a title that I can put on a business card. But yeah,
Well,
in this very fast-paced industry and growing and expanding industry, maybe it's not so bad to be more open-minded and to adapt to things that you're good at or passionate about, and not be kind of maybe stuck in one place.
I mean, that is wonderful advice, right? Don't be afraid to fail. Always be open-minded and learn from everything you do, whether it's a success or a failure, for sure. I think that is great advice. And I think you would be surprised. I'm pretty sure I've done 15 podcast recordings. We only have 7 out so far of those 15, but not a single origin story was, I decided I wanted to get into games, so that's where I ended up. It's everybody so far to date, and I think this is just typical, didn't start, at least from maybe our generation, we didn't start out thinking, we want to work in games. It was a happy accident that turned into a lifelong career in like the best way possible, right? Mm-hmm. So in that sense, we're very fortunate to have gotten that opportunity. But yeah, I think that's great. And, you can, not that I'm telling you what to do, I would never do that, but this is for anybody listening, in the game space specifically, who may have time, bandwidth, and experience, even through like Amir Satvats has his community, ASGC, you can sign up as a mentor. There's so many people right now, very easily sign up as a mentor, that are just looking for somebody to talk to. They've been laid off. They don't know what to do. They're looking for somebody to help even listen. So I would encourage listeners to do that if they have the opportunity to do that.
Right.
It's super helpful. Okay. You've been so generous with your time. I have one last question. I asked this of everybody. It's silly.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Normally people don't get the questions beforehand. So you've had a little time to think.
No,
So what is that one game? What is that one game if like you could go back and play it from scratch? You've never, that one, like from fresh, you had no recollection of it. What would it be?
I don't know what everyone else's answers have been.
Everybody's always different.
The me today, because of yes, recent work, but walking down memory lane when I was in Japan recently. Okay, promise not to laugh.
I'll do my best.
Okay, pole position.
What a great game. I love pole position.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Prepare to qualify. Yeah. I still hear in my head.
Okay, yeah. Pole position. My older brother and I told
Namco.
You earlier, I was a tomboy. I spent as much time I could outdoors and the time in between like the local, American school, Japanese school. But there's this one like family mom and pop run mini mart. Like literally on our block, down the street. And it was just basically like, a 7-Eleven mixed with like arcade machines. And
like a lesson.
We do our tours and get like, our 25 cents for each thing that we do. Right. Yep. And I just remember going down the street, and then the next block had another one. So I don't know how many quarters or rolls of quarters we've spent back in those days, but yeah, pole position. Maybe that's where my car thing came from.
Probably. What a great memory. I mean, we talk about a lot on this podcast about nostalgia and how powerful it is, but like I have very similar memories. My mom was like a bowler. I was a latchkey kid, but she would take me to the bowling alley where she would go bowl. To your point, like I just have a handful of quarters or whatever, and
Right.
just playing Donkey Kong or whatever, Pac-Man. It's so vivid.
Pac-Man was it?
Yeah. Anyway, good times. Kyoko,
yes,
thank you so
Greg.
much. It was such a pleasure. We barely scratched the surface, but like all good things, they must end at some point. So we'll call it here.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. It's really interesting. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you took a leap of faith and did this. And I really appreciate you. You're such a good person.
Thank you for having me. Greg, this is my first maybe a second. I don't remember, but yeah, this is not common for me. So I hope some of it was interesting.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to all the other guests that you're going to have. And congratulations on launching the podcast.
Thank you very much. We definitely need more amazing women in games like you to come on. So I'm glad that you did. So thank you, my friend. And I'm sure we will chat more very soon off camera.
Okay. Yes, we will.
Thank you for joining. And that was Kyoko Yamashita, one of my most favorite people, also the founder of Cassis Communications, co-founder of XSEED, 10 plus years at Enhance, and one of the quietest, most consequential bridge figures between Japanese creators and Western audiences over the last 30 years. If today's conversation is your first time hearing her voice at length, well, that makes sense. It's one of the first times she's given anyone a full hour plus of it. And I'm so thrilled she chose to do that with me. So thank you, Kyoko. And everyone else, we'll see you next week on Replay. Bye.